the release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we now have 28 movies in the MCU. So today we're going to stop and rank all 28 MCU final battles from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 28 MCU final battles. My list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. As we go into this, I'm ranking these final battles based off 3 criteria. First off, how entertaining is it? The action, the comedy. Second, how well does it pay off the character's arc? How satisfying are the emotional moments in the finale? And third, how memorable is it? Does it stick with you, or do you forget it as soon as the movie is over with? And let's get started. Coming in last place, Thor: The Dark World. No real surprise here. This is universally regarded as one of, if not the worst film in the MCU, and that's largely because the plot and the villain simply aren't interesting, compelling, or memorable. And when your villain poses no threat in a way that you care about, when you get to the final battle, there's not a whole lot you can do there to make it emotionally satisfying and interesting. And so you get to the end of this movie and there's a bunch of portal hopping. We're in a bunch of different locations, but there's nothing in the action that's interesting or memorable. The plot isn't one that you're engaging with, so as things happen, it's not like you have this sense of payoff or satisfaction. And even the things where there's actual costs, like the death of Loki, are undone by the end of the film. So just a total dud that doesn't work on any level. Number 27, Captain Marvel. Now, this is a character that can be difficult to write because she is so overpowered. And the way they tried to address that with this film is give her like all this memory loss. She's trying to figure out who she is. She's being controlled. In which case, as you move into the finale, it's not that she's had this big, gigantic character arc. She just realizes, oh yeah, I'm better than everyone else and I'm awesome. And then it just becomes her beating everybody up. It's just, no one is an actual threat. No one can hold their own against her. She's battling a bunch of people, takes them all out. Then Ronan shows up and she just easily takes out Ronan's spaceship. So the return of Ronan is wasted. And then when she fights Yon-Rogg, he's like, come and face me like a man.
Turn off the light show and prove to me you can beat me without...
And she punches him one time, defeats him. There's nothing interesting about someone that just being able to totally school and own everybody. And the villains themselves weren't ones you cared about them actually getting defeated. So one where you just don't feel anything by the end of it. Next up, Thor. Now, this is a frustrating one because I think this movie does have a lot of good things to offer, but the main plot line is largely about Thor's ego and his personal journey working through his own issues while on Earth and learning humility. And the actual villain plotline is kind of off in the background. Loki's secretly doing stuff. And so our hero isn't working to stop Loki throughout the runtime of the movie. In fact, he only learns that Loki's the bad guy that needs to be stopped as we enter the third act. So when you get there and you have Thor and Loki battling on the Rainbow Road, it's not actually paying off a bunch of stuff in the plot line. It's just you have to have a final battle in a movie like this, so you get one. And Loki and Thor fighting, not the most interesting pairing for this type of battle. They're very interesting in other contexts, but against each other, Thor's gonna win when he's swinging his hammer at Loki. And so a movie that has some good elements, but one of the standouts isn't the final battle. Number 25, Eternals. As with all things Eternals, the movie's so polarizing. Some of you will have this one way up because the plot, the character arcs, and the themes worked for you. But for people like me, those things didn't work, and they try to pay them off in the finale. and thus it just fell very flat for me. And this one in particular was frustrating because I felt they even set up some interesting ideas about the deviants were being used by the Celestials, and they set up a moment in the finale where I thought the Eternals and deviants were actually going to team up to try and stop the Celestials in their mission. And then as soon as I was about to be like, oh, this is pretty cool, they undo it immediately, and the Eternals start battling the deviants out for revenge and have Thea battling the one. I thought it just rang so hollow. The ideas didn't work. The characters were frustrating. It tried to redeem people that had turned on humanity, and I don't like it when humanity is turned on because I'm a human and I don't want to die. And then after the finale, they even had the Eternals that were on the side of saving humanity being like, I wonder if we should have let everybody die afterwards. I just don't know. And when your movie doesn't know if your final battle was worth it, then I don't think that your final battle was worth it. Then we have Black Widow. Generally speaking, I'm more positive on this film than most people, but the third act, the final battle, is where it really kind of goes off the rails. And while they generally had a pretty grounded little spy film, we get into the final battle and suddenly we're in a sky base. People are like sword fighting while falling out of the sky. And there's a bunch of just kind of bad choices in here. Right off the bat, they waste Taskmaster and just like a horrible misuse of the character that just turns it into a human robot rather than this great villain from the source material. Red Guardian gets a little fight with Taskmaster, but that's even mostly wasted. And they're going for big spectacle, but even the CGI looked really bad, which is a bad sign when your movie was delayed a year. You had a year to fix it, and they didn't. So kind of another bland one. Number 23, Ant-Man and the Wasp. And I'll say this, I think all the final battles from here on up have something good to offer in them, whether it's the action, the emotional payoff. In the context of this film, I feel like the final battle, or really final chase, it's an entertaining sequence, but it feels like it should be the chase in the middle of the movie, not the final battle. It's an entertaining, funny bit that uses the shrinking, the expanding, all that fun stuff to great effect to put a smile on my face. It's entertaining, but it's just kind of a random throwaway action sequence in the film, in which case I enjoy it as a sequence in and of itself. It's not a great final battle. That will bring us to Iron Man 2. And in general, I think that this is a good action sequence. It just feels a little bit too much like a rehash of the previous movie where once again Iron Man is battling someone else in a knockoff Iron Man suit. It starts off with the drone chase, so there's a couple more elements thrown in there. The standout segment here is that War Machine finally teams up with Tony, and so you get a couple of just cool shots of Iron Man and War Machine mowing down drones, but then once again we're battling a guy in a suit that has scorn for Tony Stark. And so it's just, it does have good shots on it, it does have some exciting action, but generally speaking, a rehash of the first one, and the first one itself doesn't have the most thrilling and exciting final battle on this list. Number 21, Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I really like this film, and I find it to be one of the most rewatchable films in the entire MCU, and I think that Vulture is one of the best villains in the MCU. Hot dog. The actual way their final battle plays out, it's fine. You get Spider-Man without his fancy suit going after Vulture as he's robbing the Avengers Tower, and he's hanging on to this plane, and eventually a crash takes place and they're on the land and there's debris everywhere. It's fine. There's an element of satisfaction to this version of Peter Parker embracing I'm a hero because of my powers. It's not about the tech. It's not about a title. It's not about being on a team. There's something to that. I just don't, it doesn't pay off all that well for me. And the action itself, there's nothing really memorable in my mind. Kicking off our top 20, Iron Man. Now, I love Iron Man. I think this is absolutely a top tier MCU film. But the thing that works about the film is that it's able to focus on the character of Tony Stark. You care about him and his hero's journey so much. The final battle itself, it's fun to watch two big robot guys duke it out, but it's a pretty short sequence. And Obadiah Stane isn't the most compelling of villains, and so they worked in just the right enough cleverness that I think it's better than the Iron Man 2 one, even though Iron Man 2 I think is a bigger action sequence. And so they had kind of, with the icing on the suits and Tony having a battery that's not working because it's his leftover one that can power something for 15 minutes. So there's just some really good writing that adds some conflict in there and urgency and tension. But it's a pretty short two guys punching each other in the face robot suit. And the arc for Tony is paid off before this. And then it's great after this with the final moment where he walks up to the podium and says, "I am Iron Man." The battle itself it's just a cool robot punching each other scene. Number 19, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And this was a really tough one for me to decide where to place on this list. Very infamously, I am not a fan of this film, and I'm not actually a fan of the action in the final battle here, but I think it has some really nice emotional moments. I would say in particular with Yondu, whether he's acting out his Mary Poppins impression,
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all,
or finally kind of revealing his emotional, his connections, his love for Star-Lord. That stuff works really nicely for me, pays off. That's potentially the best stuff in this entire film, and it's in the middle of the third act final battle. The actual battle itself with whether Ego or the Sovereign and all their spaceships, to me, it's just CGI noise. It's not creative CGI stuff. It's just so busy. There's so much stuff happening that it's not thrilling, exciting action for me at all. And the stuff with Ego should have more emotional weight to it, but I think they delayed revealing him as a villain until too late in the film. So just kind of, that stuff all rings hollow to me. It's the Yondu stuff that actually pulled this guy up, this film up out of the bottom tier. Number 18, Black Panther. And this is another tricky one for me to place because I think that what this movie does so well is intertwine its themes with its story. And so much of that does pay off in the third act, whether you're talking about T'Challa and Killmonger and the way that while our villain needs to be defeated, he does sway T'Challa in another sense. That pays off there, as well as just the tensions inside of Wakanda, the different sides that they take. That's paid off there. And then there's the actual action itself, which is silly. It has war rhinos. There's bad CGI. There's a bunch of shots that just don't look very good. And which is, as a final battle, the battle itself, not so great. The emotional payoff, satisfying conclusion to the story arcs actually does work. So a bit of a tricky one to place on this list, but I don't think it's one of the better ones. Next up, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And I wish I could put this one higher up on this list because I love that it goes full Sam Raimi weird horror conclusion here with Doctor Strange and taking over a dead body, becoming zombie Strange with like demons flying all around him. And it's going full Raimi with the goofiness, the campiness of it all, the horrifying nature of it. And then the actual showdown between zombie Strange and Wanda. Not all that interesting. It's pretty short. So I love they did all that with that. And then you get America Chavez joins in for a little bit and she throws a couple punches. They don't overplay that as if she's got everything figured out. They just a little bit there. But the thing that actually kind of lifts this one up is that the eventual conclusion to the battle isn't that we're able to outpunch Wanda, who we've demonstrated to be unbelievably powerful. It's that they realize the way to do this is to capture her humanity again. So America Chavez actually gives her what she wants and drops her in a world with her kids who are terrified of her. I love that that's how they resolved all of this. I just wish that, why didn't you give us more of Zombie Strange and do some really wild creative stuff with Zombie Strange? That could have been amazing. And instead it was like, oh, that was a cool idea you didn't do anything with. Okay. Number 16, Ant-Man. Now, this is a fun, lighthearted MCU film, and that's what its conclusion offers. It's not a big emotional payoff. It's not a villain that's super interesting that he got defeated. It's just a fun, clever finale for this film where they're battling on a Thomas the Tank Engine set. It's incredibly memorable. Size scale, very small. Stakes, not all that big. But it's just a clever, different way to take the unique powers and skill sets of this hero, this villain, put them in a context that sticks with you in your brain, puts images of a Thomas the Tank Engine exploding out the front of a house, and it sticks with you, and it fit the movie that we were watching. Number 15, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. And this is another one that's a little bit tricky for me to place because there's so much in here that's so good and so much that's like, ugh, MCU, why can't you stop doing that stuff? So on the positive side, it pays off this whole arc that our hero and our villain have been on, this family battle, that the dad can't let go of the hope that maybe his wife is still out there, and the son finally facing his father that he knows is a bad guy that needs to be stopped. And there's always something very powerful about a father and the son engaging in a big, gigantic battle. Add to that, I kind of love that it like leaned heavy into the mythology and everything. And so they're literally like riding dragons in this finale. Now, I've criticized this movie in the past for having too much CGI. I'm not referring to the final battle. The final battle, I'm fine that it goes spectacle, CGI dragons, and all of that fun stuff. It's all the previous stuff where they could have just trusted the choreography. Where it loses me, though, is that all throughout this sequence that has big emotional stakes as well as threatening stakes to the world, it cuts to Trevor on the ground doing his shtick. And it cuts to cheesy little jokes. And this stuff that just pulls you out of the moment, cheapens it, and you take what almost could have been this serious finale with actual stakes and emotion and cuts it. Cuts the tension at the wrong moment, in the wrong way, with cheap, lazy jokes. Next up, Spider-Man Far From Home. And this is a movie that I tend to be more critical of than most of you, but the final battle's pretty good, where you set up this big, gigantic scheme from Mysterio, and where he's going to establish himself as the new hero using the technology to be able to take everything he's been doing, this whole grander scale, and Spider-Man shows up to save this day. Happy actually is trying to save some kids and has his own little side quest that I thought was a great little touch to throw into the mix of it that adds some humor that actually fits the movie, fits the scenes that they're in, fits the character, while showing Happy as someone that's willing to get in on the action.
Who are you? I work with Spider-Man.
You work for Spider-Man?
I work with Spider-Man, not for Spider-Man.
You get some Mysterio sequences in there. Now, I think some of it comes off a bit underwhelming because the previous Mysterio sequence was so good that they only do a little bit of that in the final bit here. So I wish it could have been a little bit more, but generally speaking, pretty good final battle. Number 13, Captain America, the First Avenger. Now, this is a movie that I think is best when it's all about Steve and his journey. And the finale itself is best when it's about Steve and his journey and his ultimate sacrifice and the way they tie it back to his love for Peggy.
Maggie, you're gonna need a rain check on that dance.
And as he's choosing to crash the ship to save lives, he's just thinking about Peggy. He doesn't really care that he's dying because he's a hero. He's fine with that. But there's that lost opportunity with Peggy that he cares about so much. And that's the stuff that really works in this movie, and it really works in the finale. The sequence itself, you get some good action in there. It feels a bit like a bunch of other stuff that we've kind of seen in the back half of the film when they're montaging through World War II. It's a lot of flames and shields being thrown and machine guns and everything like that. So it's fine. But I think on that emotional level, caring about the characters, that's where it really works. Number 12, Iron Man 3. Now, this is another one of these MCU films that tends to be more heavily criticized, but the criticisms are mostly focused in on the Trevor Mandarin twist rather than most of the other elements of the film. And at the end of the day, Shane Black knows how to write and direct action. So when you get to the third act here, it is a blend of Tony Stark working with Rhodey running around without suits, as well as throwing in a whole bunch of suits. And there's guys with machine guns. There's Killian's with his weird, freaky powers. And then the big twist in the finale, Pepper has powers herself. And so it has a bunch of different layers to it. I mean, of course, the most memorable part is 40 different Iron Man suits showing up, a Hulk Buster-esque suit smashing through containers. That's just cool. It's memorable, but it is also the payoff of this whole journey that he has been on, struggling with the events of Avengers and deciding what his future is and how does Pepper fall into it. And so it's just a real good finale. Then we have the Incredible Hulk, and say what you will about the movie as a whole, I think that this is a really fun third act. Bruce accepts his destiny as a hero. Thunderbolt Ross swallows his pride and actually accepts the fact that this guy's on his side. And then you get a boss fight between Hulk and Abomination. And Hulk is one of these characters that, because he's so strong, he's so powerful, it's tough to have a threat for him that actually matches his physical strength. And so he's a character that it fits to have a villain that's the evil version of our hero. And you get that here, where you have this big, long, extended boss fight where Hulk is putting on cars as boxing gloves, using huge chains. It just works as a slam bang payoff for the movie that you've been watching up to that point in time. I dig this finale. Bringing us into the top 10, Thor Ragnarok. With this film in general, Taika Waititi just gave us this energetic, vibrant Thor film, and you feel all of that as you move into the finale. But what's really cool about the finale is that you have all these different characters, character arcs, and then plot elements that all kind of come together in the third act to just make for a very satisfying conclusion to this film. Whether you're talking about the fact that we have a villain that has been established to be extraordinarily powerful and an actual threat to Thor, and Thor has to grow and change as part of his journey to defeat her.
I'm not as strong as you.
No. You're stronger.
Even learning that he's not the god of hammers, but he is the god of thunder and uses that against her.
Without my hammer, I can't.
Are you Thor, the god of hammers?
You have the Scourge and his little mini arc in the film of trying to be important and meaningful. For all these side characters, you have some little jokes thrown in there, but just the right way to do them. And then, of course, you have Ragnarok itself happening as this little plot point from the opening scene pays off so well in this final battle. And you just have an amazing use of the Immigrant Song, as you had amazing uses of it all throughout the entire film. Makes for a slam bang great finale. Number 9, Doctor Strange. Now, there's several things that I enjoy about this one. First one is that the first part of our little final battle involves this whole segment where Doctor Strange is running forward, turning back time, rebuilding everything, and it's just a very cool visual that, especially as people join in to fight them while time's in reverse and things are being rebuilt, it's just interesting. It's like something you haven't really seen before. Second thing that is fun about it is that it's built around the intelligence and power of our hero, not just about the might of the Force or something like that, in which case he realizes the way to win isn't by trying to out sorcery these powerful beings. It's to use this one thing to destroy Dormammu by trapping him in a moment.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
And the thing that goes right along with that is that the whole journey of Stephen Strange is that he was driven entirely by ego, and I have to be the greatest surgeon. I have to do this stuff where everyone sees me, and I need my hands to be able to do that. I don't want to join this big, gigantic war. I don't want to be sucked in that for eternity. I want to fix my hands. And then the choice he makes in the finale is, I will lock myself in an eternal time loop with Dormammu to save everyone else. It's the payoff of the journey that he's on. And of course, you get the epic, memorable line, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. And who would have thought that would make for a good way to have a final battle in a film? But I think it's just a great payoff to this film. Number 8, Guardians of the Galaxy. And this one has a little bit of everything in it. You have our Guardians on the ground, some of them fighting with swords. You have spaceships flying all around in a battle and forming a net to stop this invasion. As you go throughout the sequence, you have moments of tragedy where they take a line as sappy as and just turn it into this heartfelt, emotional moment. And it even manages to close out with a dance battle.
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
Combined with people holding hands as a method to beat the bad guy. And as cheesy, as goofy as all of that is, it works. Because James Gunn made characters that you cared about, set the tone just right, that you could do goofy things and sappy things and cheesy things. And it's awesome. And that's what he did with this final battle. Number 7, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And here we have S.H.I.E.L.D's evil aircraft carrier thing taking off, and Steve Rogers has to stop it while battling Bucky, the Winter Soldier. And you have these two, in a sense, brothers having to fight. One of them doesn't understand who the other one is. He just knows there's some significance there. And the other one, unwilling to hurt the other one. And that's really what makes it special, is that at the core of this fight, it's about someone trying to win back their best friend, this person that's as close as a brother, that means everything to him. And at the same time, he's a villain that needs to be stopped so that millions of people don't die. And the complexity of that just makes for a satisfying fight to have in this exotic, fancy, big, gigantic location where you have Falcon flying around, all the fun stuff taking place. You get the spectacle, but more importantly, you have the heart. Next up, Avengers Age of Ultron. And this is a movie where I have quite a few problems with the first 2 acts of this film. But once you move into the 3rd act and you have the Avengers assembling to battle Ultron and all of his Ultron bots, it's a great, fun, slam-bang finale. Joss Whedon knows how to craft these big sequences where everybody gets a moment in the spotlight. Everybody gets to be a hero. There's just enough of the trailer shots that are just so cool, where it's the sweeping shots of everybody in slow-mo battling creatures. It's all in there. It's thrilling. It's exciting. And you get a little bit of tragedy in there with the Quicksilver loss.
You didn't see that coming.
But it's paid off even better as you see the reaction from Elizabeth Olsen. And that's what really deaths in movies matter, when you see how they affect other people, and you just see that heartbroken Wanda going to action, going into battle. You have the little moment right before that where Hawkeye talks to her, gives her the pep talk.
Okay, look, the city's flying. We're fighting an army of robots. And I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
To give her the strength to do what she needs to do. There's some great dialogue between Vision and Ultron that's just really powerful.
You're unbearably naive.
Well, I was born yesterday. And
all the best of Whedon's contributions to the MCU, you see so much of that in the final battle here. In 5th place, Captain America Civil War. Whereas many of the final battles in the top 10 here are these just massive, epic, gigantic battles with lots of characters, lots of spectacle, gigantic stakes. This one is very personal. By this point in time in the movie, we've already had the airport fight sequence, and now it's just Steve and Tony. I guess Bucky's there too, but really, it's about Steve and Tony two people that have grown to greatly respect each other, that have saved the world together multiple times, and their competing loyalties and the complicating things of when your best friend was brainwashed and turned into assassin who just happens to have killed this other guy that you're very close with's parents, and this guy happens to be very impulsive. You get the actual earned tension that comes with that. And so you get a great action sequence and everything that takes place. But so much more so, it's about the erosion of a friendship in the defense of another friendship, in the defense of honor of one's parents. And because of that, this friendship just falls apart and the Avengers crumble. One of the big criticisms of this film is that there's not enough stakes, not enough people died. But what was the consequence of this movie? The Avengers broke up, thus they weren't prepared for when Thanos showed up. And because of that, Thanos won, and half of life in the universe died. All because of this final battle. It really did matter. In fourth place, The Avengers. And this is just a good old-fashioned fun slam bang finale where they'd crafted a fairly streamlined narrative that led up to Loki opening up this portal. This alien invasion begins that just allows our Avengers to have this gigantic army of cannon fodder to take out. And it was just set up so good, so that there's all these moments that should be really cheesy and cringy, like Hulk slamming Loki on the ground.
I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
And then him punching Thor, they shouldn't work. But by this point in time in the movie, you're just so invested in it and care about the characters, you're ready to just have fun. And that's what this third act final battle is all about. Even Hawkeye gets some great moments thrown in the mix. You get the sacrifice from Tony kind of continuing his journey from egomaniac to hero. And all of it is just so satisfying, so fun to watch. It's straightforward. You couldn't do one this straightforward again and have it work the same way. But that first time we bring the team together, you can't just have them battling a cannon fodder army, and it absolutely works. And they found all sorts of ways to tie it into later films too, which was so very cool. I think this one is a total blast. Real quick, before I give you my top three, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the MCU final battles. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other MCU rankings in the past. In particular one, just a few days ago, where I ranked all the MCU and DCU films together. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll love that one too. You can check all of that out in this playlist right up here when this video's done. In third place, Avengers Infinity War. Now, I absolutely love this movie because it brings together all of these characters into not just one, but multiple epic final battles that are taking place at the same time on this journey to see who will gain control of the Infinity Stones. And in the process, the final battle is just as thrilling and as exciting as the premise of the movie as a whole, as you get these massive, massive battles with all of these characters intertwining, and they found ways to incorporate characters' strengths, their weaknesses, their insecurities, to keep making the battles compelling, keep adding conflict into the mix, ways to have their ingenuity to have victories, and their impulsiveness to cause the ultimate failure of all of this. Along the way, you have moments where you show the determination of characters, where you have Steve Rogers running up to Thanos, grabbing the gauntlet, even though that's definitely not going to be successful. But you see the determination in his eyes. I mean, it just has so many awesome moments in the full epicness of the final battles that take place, whether the cool shots of stuff that Doctor Strange does while battling Thanos, or when Thor arrives in Wakanda. And it is just epic and then ultimately the good guys lose in the end. It is a true epic final battle. Our runner-up, Spider-Man No Way Home. And this was just a special film because they did it. They pulled off pulling together all of the Spider-Man franchises together into a multiverse movie and have it feel earned and delivering the moments that you actually wanted. And so much of that comes together in the final battle where they just play off all of these different arcs and journeys that these characters have been on and found a way to have a compelling but also coherent final battle that plays off all of that was in a way that was so satisfying. You have these little moments where you just pause and Doc Ock, who's healthy again, sees Peter Parker and has an interaction with him. That's special. Where you have Andrew Garfield talking to Electro and saying, like, you were always important. You were always a big deal. You always mattered. Like, just, it pauses to have the character moments. It finds a little way to give resolution to Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker in saving MJ.
Are you okay?
And just this potent, powerful moment. And then it continues the arc of Tom Holland's Peter Parker, where he's out for revenge on a revenge mission that we know won't pay off what he thinks it will. And Toby desperately tries to stop him, even if it means he might die. And they tricked the audience into thinking Toby was going to die. And you knew that's what Toby would do, because he cared that much about saving this Peter Parker from turning into a murderer. It was just such a Spider-Man story. It's just so powerful, so satisfying, and something special to give to the fans that they pulled it off and put so much heart into it and had all the little things that you wanted in there. And by the end of it, it also pays off Tom Holland's journey, and he fully realizes the cost and what it means that with great power comes great responsibility. He finally learns that with the choice that he has to make in the finale. That's when you have just an amazing, amazing final battle. But coming in first place, I have to go with Avengers Endgame. And I don't know what any movie could do to top what they pulled off in the final hour of this film. And whenever my family watches almost any movie in the MCU, we'll watch it, we'll have fun with it. And then it gets to the end, and my wife will go, let's just watch the last hour of Endgame again. And every time, it's so satisfying, so enjoyable on so many different levels. You know, it kicks off essentially with three of our heroes battling Thanos. And you get to this moment where Iron Man's been taken out, Thor's knocked down, and Captain America is able to pick up the hammer and use it against Thanos. And before he gets knocked out, there's this little moment where you just see on Thor's face,
I knew it.
paying off this kind of throwaway little joke in Age of Ultron where Steve went to lift it, and you see it wiggle just a little bit, and you see this nervousness on Thor's face. But when it comes to matter, of course, Thor knows that his good buddy is worthy, and he's so happy about that. You have this amazing moment where it's just Steve standing there, the last one standing, and Thanos' whole army arrives, and it feels like all is lost. But they set up the movie so well that as an audience member, you kind of forget that Hulk's snap worked. You forget about it. And so you have that moment, you're like, man, what's about to happen? And once again, they just pay off all of these past films. It's a little on your left. And then the portals start opening. And it's just one of those things of like, to earn that moment. Not just throw it in there, not just cameos for cameos, not just people appearing, but actually earn that moment where the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is on screen together. plot-wise, it makes sense. It was developed and you earn this incredible moment combined with a fantastic score from Alan Silvestri, and it is offensive that score and Portals, that piece of music, wasn't nominated at the Oscars and didn't win at the Oscars, because no piece of music made people cry as much in that year as Alan Silvestri's score for that film. All leading up to Captain America saying his classic line, Avengers Assemble, and just leads to 10, 15 minutes of just everybody getting a great moment, everybody getting a payoff.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
You will.
Little things like pausing to have Peter Parker is just naively, hey, let me give you a hug. I was just suddenly dust. And you just see the look on Tony's face that he's been heartbroken for 5 years, that he failed this kid. And then he's back giving him a hug, and the kid doesn't even notice, doesn't even realize how important of a moment it is to Tony. And Robert Downey Jr.'s just performance, just amazing. Of course, all of it leading up to that moment where the battle's taking place. Thanos is about to get the glove and he's about to snap again. And you have this moment where Tony makes eye contact with Strange, and Tony realizes, I get it. I get why Strange couldn't tell us what the plan was, and if I tell you if it is, that it won't happen. I get what's happening. I get it now. I know what I need to do. And you get the completion of his arc and makes the sacrifice, repeats his iconic line from the first film.
And I am Iron Man.
When you rewatch the first Iron Man, there's scenes in the cave, and the dialogue that takes place there, and then later in the film is dialogue with Pepper about how she's worried about him and why is he doing this stuff with the suit, and she doesn't want to watch him die, and he's like, you've seen me do so many crazy things, but finally I know what I'm here for, and this matters. And this is the ultimate payoff of the completion of his hero's journey. Just, it's on every level satisfying, emotional, fan service, but fan service that's earned, the good kind of fan service, and just an amazing action sequence. I don't know how any movie could ever top the final battle in Endgame. So, obviously, it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I got more like it. You can check out that playlist right over there with my other MCU rankings. I ranked the movies, the heroes, the villains, the everythings, the directors a few days ago. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much. Bye-bye.